Hey, so good morning, everybody. Good to be with you all today. So I wanted to tackle a big subject, big topic, but hopefully try to make it practical, and hopefully ground something that you've heard a lot about, but in maybe framing it in a different way. And that's the topic of faith. So it's an interesting topic, faith, and then faith and intelligence, and the relationship between these two things, the sort of interplay with those. So I'll talk a little bit about the history, but also mostly about the practical applications. The short version of that is that faith is a natural mind that simply opposes the perception of faults in whatever it's focused on. It's a mind that opposes the perception of faults in whatever it's focused on. So we already, the most important, or some of the most important types of faith are the minds of faith that admire good qualities like patience and generosity and the practice of meditation and peace and so forth. All these kinds of things. Anything you can see faults in anything, right? You could describe generosity as being a very faulty mind and so forth, or you can see good qualities in things like generosity and so forth. So faith, I'll come to it a bit. I'll obviously spend more time on it, but just want us to know that faith is always operating in our mind whenever there is some experience of peace and some sense of well-being, and that actually goes hand in hand with the mind of faith. And so one of the things we're doing here is we're generating faith in the practice of meditation as a way to settle the mind. And so we're simply looking at meditation as something that we have optimism can help us to settle our mind. And we're using that mind of faith or optimism to allow us to persevere, to focus, to pay attention in the meditation practice so that gradually we gain those experiences that we've been hoping for. So let's start, as usual, with some meditation to get more experience of that inner experience. And as usual, we will start with just a deep breath in and out. And another deep breath, and just inviting ourselves to relax. And then another breath, just asking ourselves, what is important right now? And if we bring our attention to our body, we just ask ourselves, what are we feeling in our body? For example, we can check our head, the top of our head, see, is there any sensation there? Around through our eyes, sides of our jaw, ears, back of our neck. We're scanning through our body. And just by bringing attention there, with a mind, with an attitude of kindness, sometimes we can notice some relaxation happening. If we notice any tension, we can just allow it to relax. bring our attention into our neck. And into our shoulders. Then feel through our chest. You may notice some opportunity for your chest to open a bit and relax. Same with your upper back. You can relax down your arms through your fingers. We relax down our lower back and our belly. Down through our pelvis. We relax our thighs. Down through our legs and into our feet and toes. And as we breathe now, we can try to notice where we're feeling the sensation of our breath, where in our body that sensation appears. We may mostly feel our breathing in our belly or our chest, perhaps in our nose, mouth. But perhaps we can even feel some slight change even down to our fingertips or the tips of our toes. Elsewhere in our body as there is some expansion and contraction. If our mind wanders off, we can again notice our breathing. Every moment that we are focusing on our body and our breath, we are strengthening these mental pathways leading to peace. And then we can generate some sense of gratitude, a feeling, bringing to mind something or someone for which we're grateful. We try to notice where in our body we feel that sense of gratitude. And then we can generate an intention that through every moment we're spending here in this session, we are strengthening our inner peace, our wisdom, our good heart, and that these inner pathways we are building, they will be the cause for great benefit. So we can think about what benefit we want to bring for ourselves, for the people around us through improving our good qualities here. And then we can open our eyes and arise from meditation. So on the topic of faith, so when I I started doing these meditation classes and these sessions. I made a clear and strong decision to offer them in a secular way, to make sure that they were all easily acceptable, understandable, internalizable by people from any different background. And so even now mentioning, for me, even now mentioning the word faith, I get a little bit like, it's a little bit tricky subject, right? Not sure. And it's a funny thing, because faith is a bit of a loaded word. Like they say in polite company, there's two things you generally don't want to talk about in polite company. There's a longer list, really, but politics and religion are top of the list, right? Because religious beliefs, they're very heartfelt, right? They're very deep, and um, um, people can get into uh, really intense, contentious, intractable arguments and disagreements over, in some cases, incredible subtleties of belief and all this kind of stuff. So faith is a very interesting and tricky subject. And the topic I really wanted to talk about broadly is faith and intelligence, because we've uh, in our society over the last few centuries, we've kind of framed this as a debate between faith and reason, or faith and science, or faith and intelligence. Now, not everybody buys into that duality, but that's still sort of a strong tendency. We live generally in a secular society because the anyway, for a lot of reasons, but um, I want to suggest that that's a false dichotomy. That Is the internet connection okay? I think I may be pausing a little bit, but iffy. Okay. Um, we'll see how it goes. I think it's just a temporary thing. It's a false dichotomy, but it's something that we need to dig into a little bit more. It is possible to have faith that the two are quite different things, right? Faith and intelligence are very different capabilities within the mind. You can have one, you can have the other, but you can also have both active at the same time. And so, at least in the Buddhist tradition, wisdom is defined literally as like a combination of faith and intelligence together. So that's one of the reasons I chose the name for this program, Digital Wisdom, as a combination of these two minds, as opposed to thinking of them as radically separate. We can think of examples of people who have faith, but we think, well, that's not a very intelligent point of view that you're holding. And we can think about people who have intelligence, but maybe they don't have not only do they not have a faithful mind in any traditional sense, but they may also not have a virtuous mind at all, or a kind or peaceful mind at all, right? So we know that the two can operate independent of one another, but it's also important to know that they can operate together, and that really is a sweet spot. So if you ask yourself why people of faith, so to speak, why are they so reluctant to give up their faith? Why will people often come to all kinds of contrived and strange arguments to try to explain the world in such a way to protect their faith? The reason is because it's, for them, extraordinarily deeply meaningful experience to have that faith. It brings them a sense of comfort, peace, purpose in the world. It is the root of many of their good qualities, virtuous tendencies, and so forth. And it is so valuable that they're even willing to ignore some reasoning and rationality and so forth to protect that faith. But I want to weigh in on the definition of faith, at least according to the Buddhist tradition, which is a mind that opposes the perception of faults in its object. a mind that opposes the perception of faults in its object. So our mind is always observing some object. I'm looking at you now, we can look around, we can think about things. That's mind and its object. The mind can see faults in anything. There is no person, no place, no thing, whatever, that you cannot see faults in. I think I told the story of if I were to ask you who are the most uh, um, what's the word? Who are the people who you could never criticize? Like they're just so good that you would always have faith in them, right? Mother Teresa is always on people's short list. Gandhi, Martin Luther King, the Dalai Lama, right? Um, they're like these top 5 poster children for like goodness, right? I think I told you when I was in high school, we hosted an Italian Catholic monk at our house for 9 months. He lived with us. We in Mother Teresa's organization, and he was like, "Oh, she's so bad-tempered." Nelson Mandela is another great example. She's terrible. She's always bossy, and so so from his point of view, he saw plenty of faults in Mother Teresa, right? All of these folks that are listed, they have their detractors, right? They have people who, I don't want to detract from them by listing the specifics, but I'm just going to say, if you dig, you'll find people who definitely do not think that they are admirable individuals. Our mind is amazing, right? You can be incredibly fortunate and still feel miserable. This is one of these early, I don't know, spiritual lesson my parents taught me that, if I didn't get my way, and I'm going to retaliate for not getting my way by being miserable, right? And my parents are like, you're just making yourself unhappy, right? You're not going to get your way, and you can either make yourself unhappy or you can just deal with it. And at some point, to some degree, I understood them to be correct. And I just thought, okay, I'm going to stop making myself miserable. So you can see faults in anything, but you can also see good qualities in anything. I gave this quote a few times, from Einstein: either everything is a miracle or nothing is a miracle. This actually is a very, very deep quote. What makes the difference, right? Either everything's a miracle or nothing's a miracle. So let's just even start with the word miracle. What's a miracle? Well, one way of explaining it is something you could only understand through a mind of faith. So for John, it's all a miracle. His future is so bright, he has to wear shades. It's all a miracle. And what's going on is that inside his mind, he's got this mind of wonderment, right? If you have a mind of wonderment, everything's a miracle. If you have a mind of misery and resentment, everything is terrible. And you can go from one of those states to another within seconds, within minutes. So, you wake up and the world is terrible, and then you have some coffee and the world is wonderful, and then a little bit later the world is terrible, and like, what on earth? What kind of world are you living in? Is the world is like the weather, right? But who's creating this, right? Who's creating all the wonder in the world? It's your mind that creates all the wonder. Your mind creates all the miracles, right? Your mind is a miracle worker, as they say, right? But your mind is also a misery producer, and your mind is also a buzz killer. Your mind will spoil things, right? I remember when I was a little kid, we had a magician come to my house for my brother's birthday, and he was hosting a party, a magic show for my brother and all of his friends. I'm 3 years older than my brother. and I was there watching the magician. But and my brother was like 7 or something like that. And I'm 10, and vastly, vastly more perceptive and intelligent and better in every other way than my brother, of course. Um, and the magician, that was a joke, just hopefully for the sake of the recording. But anyway, in my 10-year-old mind, that's the reality, right? And then I'm seeing the magician, and I'm like, the rabbit is not in the hat, it's behind his back. And I'm like calling this out, right, to the magician. And I did that at least a couple of times when I was a little kid. And the magician, like, there's this low-key kind of glare, like the way you kindly glare at a 10-year-old kid who is ruining the illusion and ruining the fun, in a sense. So what he was doing is he was creating some sense of wonderment. And people who are like magicians do this. But you know who else creates a sense of wonderment? Marketers. Marketers create a sense of wonderment. Bottled water, right? Bottled water. Now, one could quibble about the details and about whether the water in Fiji really is that much better than the water elsewhere in the world, right? But for the most part, if you take a somewhat skeptical point of view, it's all just water. And the difference between a $25 bottle of water at Trump Hotel and the water that comes out of your tap is debatable, to say the least. But you put a beautiful label on, you have amazing advertisements, you generate a sense of wonder, and people are like, oh, I'll pay money for that. So last night, my wife and I were taking a walk. We have a fancy mall in San Diego called Fashion Valley. It's all these high-end stores. And we go there sometimes just to walk the dogs because it's just a nice, quiet place. And inside all of these stores, Gucci and all this stuff, this is my wife kind of came from that world of fashion and so forth, and I came from the world of very scruffy people who don't care about fashion. But inside they have, a handbag, and there's lighting on it, and it's illuminated, and there's an ambiance, and there's so much setting and scene and so forth that's created around those products to basically create a sense of magic, right? Now, I don't want to ruin everything in your world or your life, right? But from one point of view, a bag is a bag is a bag is a bag. Now, different people care about different things, and there's things that I think are important that other people don't care about, and so forth. So, but what I'm saying is that it's the mind that imbues these amazing qualities in things. A mind that opposes the perception of faults is a mind of faith. So if I were to take that bag, that Gucci handbag, whatever, or an Apple computer, that's one of these things that I'm a bit more fond of. If I were to take something like this and start criticizing it and say, oh, it's not very good, and it's not very well designed, and it's ugly, and so forth, other people might take offense, but there's this subjectivity through this. Well, obviously, it's highly subjective. The way in which you're introduced to something can change your perception, but at the end of the day, all of these are what we're seeing is that there are minds of faith that are operating continuously in our experience. We have faith in people, and places, activities, and so forth. A mind that opposes the perception of faults in its object. Now, there's 3 kinds of faith. What are called admiring faith, believing faith, and wishing faith. Admiring faith is just a simple, pure-hearted admiration for something. Everyone gets this. Animals have this mind, children have this mind, and so forth. Believing faith, though, is what's often referred to as faith, where you develop a conviction or a belief that something is free from faults. And so believing faith is much more stable. And so often in a religious context, if people are encouraging you to develop faith and whatever else, they're saying you need a believing faith. You need to believe that, this book is a scripture and it's infallible, or this person is a holy being and they're perfect, and so forth. They're encouraging you to develop a believing faith. Now, the point about believing faith is it creates a more stable faith, because faith kind of goes up and down. It ebbs and flows with our mood and with the circumstances, and you can see faults in anything. But believing faith creates a bit more of it's a conviction. So it's a bit more of a determine, a stronger mind. And then from these two come wishing faith. Wishing faith is a wish to accomplish something, achieve something, attain some state. So if you have faith in meditation, for example, then you have presumably a belief that meditation can make you more peaceful. And from that belief comes a wish to meditate, to experience that result. Now, in the beginning, you might not actually experience peace. You settle down for meditation, your mind's very distracted and your butt is uncomfortable on the seat and so forth, and you're not experiencing those goals. But the degree to which you have conviction, for example, believing faith that in the power of meditation, then you can persevere, right? You can hang in there. So the problem is that some of the faith-based structures that we've developed in our society, over the last few thousand years, that have helped to, bring communities together, set out codes of conduct and so forth, they're crashing into all of this modern information that seems to contradict it and so forth. So it feels like there's a contradiction between faith and intelligence. But if we break it down and look in a more granular way, we'll see that that faith is always present. For example, you have faith in intelligence. Like if you think intelligence is a good quality, that is a belief that opposes the perception of faults in intelligence. If I say, oh, intelligence can be a really bad thing sometimes, you're like, what do you mean? Well, I'm not saying that that's the case, but what I'm doing is that's opposing your faith in this mind of intelligence, this your belief that intelligence is free from faults, that intelligence is always good. We could definitely say that science is not going to solve all of humanity's problems. That might be an easier way to a statement that you more easily believe, right? But some people have so much faith in science, they do believe that it will solve all the world's problems. Some people believe strongly that software is all you need to solve people's problems. I remember when I was there was a friend of mine had a T-shirt that showed a man who had crawled out on the ledge of a building overlooking, ready to jump as if to commit suicide. And someone was holding a box that said version 2.0 out the window, offering him version 2.0. And it said, software solves everything. So, manifestly false, right? But the reason I'm bringing this up is to help us to appreciate that faith is actually something that we can and should cultivate. It's just we need our faith to be more refined, perhaps, than the type of faith that we may have been encouraged to develop in the past by pastors or whatever. We need a mind of faith that is much more flexible, much more intelligent than a blind faith. And that combination of faith and intelligence is wisdom. And so an example of wisdom is the wisdom that understands the benefits of giving, for example, generosity. So giving, there's another, another point of view from within the Buddhist tradition is that all virtuous minds are pervaded by faith. All virtuous minds are pervaded by faith. Wherever there is a virtuous mind of any kind, it's always pervaded by faith. And just to give one example of how that works, the mind of generosity. If we say that generosity is a virtue, it's not unreasonable. Most cultures believe that that's a truth. Where is the mind of faith in generosity? You have to see that someone else is worthy of your generosity. That's part of it. You have to see that you have something to give, and you have to see that another person is worthy of that generosity. And both of those are minds of faith, minds that oppose the perception of faults. People who are not generous, they simply either don't feel that they have anything valuable to give, or they don't think there's anyone in their world who is worthy of giving to. And it's actually a negative mind, right? But if you see, for example, your children are worthy of giving to, your partner, your friends, your coworkers, they're all worthy of giving to. That's actually a mind that is opposing the perception of faults in those people. You're not seeing them as unimportant, for example. You're seeing them instead as special. Um, if you don't think you have anything to give, that's actually a negative mind, where you're not seeing that there's anything that you have that is potentially a benefit to others. So you're seeing faults in all of your qualities, all of your possessions, and so forth. That nothing, or in yourself, that there is a lack of, that there's a need. So Eileen brings up this question of the concept of reciprocity, and that's an important it's an important concept. That reciprocity means it's like there's some partnership, there's some alliance, there's some give and take. Okay, well, I think I've stimulated some thoughtful discussion here, and maybe we can stay on and chat for a little bit. But the best way to build a relationship of reciprocity is to start with giving from your side. Like to err on the side of generosity, not saying always give everything all the time, but to have some overture of kindness, even offering to, have communication, etc., with somebody can be seen as a kind of generosity. So, why don't we do just a couple of minutes of meditation to bring this to a conclusion? I'm happy to stay on and chat if you guys want to dig into this a little bit, or we can discuss maybe on the chat group if you want to discuss later. But anyway, I just wanted to introduce those initial thoughts on faith as one of these fundamental minds that's always operating and that is worthy of cultivation. So why don't we take just a minute or two to let that settle in and just think about this definition of faith. We take a deep breath in and out just to settle our mind, to release any feelings of tension. We can think our mind can perceive faults in anything, but our mind can also oppose the perception of faults. And these two tendencies, seeing faults or opposing the perception of faults, can be defined as non-faith or faith. Either the whole world is faulty, we are faulty, everything is faulty, or everything is a miracle, wondrous, or somewhere in between. There are certain wonderful things, certain faulty things. And while our mind naturally sees some things as faulty and other things as wondrous or good, this is also something that we can learn to control, learn to change, learn to deepen or sustain faith in things that are worthy of faith, learn to overcome the perception of faults and things that don't deserve that perception, that view. We can sculpt and shape our own perceptions, and this is what we've already been doing in this short period of time. So we can just think through this brief discussion. We've already strengthened some of these habits of mind, changed our perceptions. And we can think, what kinds of results would we like to see unfold from gaining this understanding, this knowledge that faith is something we can cultivate intentionally. And then we can open our eyes and arise from this meditation. Okay. So certainly happy if you guys want to. If I feel like I've probably stirred up a lot of thoughts from you. I'm delighted to chat about that. If you have time now, or we can discuss later on the chat if you want.
I love this class. Thank you, Andrew. You gave me a